again, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about two films released in 2022, one of which get very good reviews, one of which got pretty dire reviews, basically, or very mixed at best. Both of which did very badly at the box office, both of which lost money, and they're both from big New York tours from the 90s who have had hits and failures as they went through their careers. So I'm talking about Licorrice Pizza and Amsterdam. So it's Paul Thomas Anderson and David O. Russell. Now, both these directors came out in the 90s with a big bang. Paul Thomas Anderson had Hard Eight, which was kind of dumped and it was kind of recut against his wishes, but it's still a very good film. Then he had the biggest boom with Boogie Nights, which just astonished to everybody. Probably my least favourite of his films, to be honest. I find it kind of obvious. Then he, for me, came back a lot with Magnolia and Punch Drunk Love, and he's had a very good career of lots of very good films that have had various success and fails financially, but there's been lots of good stuff like There Will Be Blood, The Master. There's just been lots of really good films there. Lots of really solid films. At least it's been solid. At best, they've been great. He's been a really good director. David O. Russell, on the other hand, has had a more checkered career. He's had more personal controversies about his behaviour on set and behaviour in his general life. So there's some people who are hating this film in Letterboxd that are. It's just to do with the filmmaker. It's nothing to do with the film itself. It's just to do with, I don't like this person, I will condemn him. The same way you get that with other directors who have had issues in their private lives that people just take as, that's the reason they hate on them straight away, is we do not like them. So that's what you get in this culture now, where people just say, I'll judge this person because I have the power to judge them in this Letterboxd rating. It's really silly, but it's just something you see. It's something like, I loathe this person. It's really important. I loathe this person. It's like, no one cares. No one cares at all. So, but David O. Russell's had his ups and downs. He's had some really good films like Three Kings. He's The Fighter. He's done a lot of fun stuff. He did Underrated Huckabees, that was the film that got him in trouble in the first place because he'd issues on set with Lily Tomlin. But these other films that have they've been difficult behind the scenes, really. But so he's had a reputation of being someone who actors either love or have problems with. But he's very passionate. He changes his mind all the time. He does a lot of improvisation within the films. He's a director who you can see in his films it's his film, straight away. He invests himself in the script. He never doesn't do scripts that are not at least rewritten by him. He's involved in the film. There's always his stamp on it. For good or bad, some films he's made have had real big success, other ones have not. But he's had a track record so that people are always worth. It's always been a case of it's worth investing in him. Now, the Amsterdam's a weird situation where it started filming and COVID hit, or it was about to start filming and COVID hit. So all the precautions for COVID took a film that was a mid-budget and made it a much bigger budget. So it actually ended up costing a lot more than it should have. Which caused a lot more trouble for it when it was released because it had so much more money to make back. And this film didn't do well. It got very mediocre reviews and the word of mouth was not good. So it bombed, so now he's probably going to go back to do a lower budget film in the next film. Paul Thomas Anderson, his film was a mid-budget as well. It didn't do well, so he'll probably do a mid-budget film, a low-budget film next time round. But he's a better track record, and he doesn't have the same stink on him from people who hate him like David Russell has. So he's probably going to be a bit better off ultimately for his next film. I was just saying straight away, that I like both of these films. One way more than the other, but I like both. So, they're both films from this year that I will rewatch over the years. I think Licorrice Pizza is a much better film though. It's one of my top 10 films of the year. Amsterdam is not, but I still liked it a lot. Amsterdam has a problem in its final act that pulls it down a lot. But it's one of those films that people either love or hate just from the early point, because its structure is so loose that you're either into it or you're not straight away. You're into the character or you're not straight away. So it's like one of those films that's love it or hate it. But I'll start with Licorrice Pizza, which came out in the early part of this year in the UK. It came out in 2021 in America, but we didn't get it here till later. And it was kind of dumped, because it didn't do well in America, and then it came over here, and I never got it locally in my cinema. So I had to basically wait till it hit streaming and buy the streaming version. And then wait till I heard it was going to be 4K upgrade, so I waited till the 4K upgrade, and then I watched it in projection. And I'm glad I waited, ultimately, for it to get a really good quality to project and to get as good a quality as I could get. Because it's wonderful. It really is wonderful. And it's one of those films, like, we hear it's about a girl in her 20s who's dealing with a younger man who's infatuated with her. You think this could be creepy and weird, and it's set in the 70s, and it could be so self-indulgent, and that was my concern going into it. Is this could be really self-indulgent, because these films can go really wrong. If you don't know what you're doing, these films can go completely haywire. You know, even though I like this director, it was one of those ones where it could still go really badly wrong. But instead, it went wonderfully. It just because it has like two unknowns in the lead. One of Alana Haim is one of the leads, and she's a singer. And her family plays her family in the film. And she's a singer who, in real life, but here she's playing someone who's not sure of herself. And he's wandering from job to job, not quite sure what she is. And she's someone with a temper, and it can be difficult to go on with sometimes. And Cooper Hoffman, who's Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, he obviously, because his father worked with Paul Thomas Anderson a lot, obviously knew him from when he was younger. So he plays the young man who's a hustler. He's always out for himself, but he's got a group of kids around him from his brother and other kids his age who are grown up with him, who are also only hustling for money and building up companies and always working and stuff and always trying to build their own companies up. But they have a one-track mind, so they're not into the world, what the world is. Well, she really is into what the world is, but she's kind of pressed down by that because she can see what's going on in the world in a way that makes her feel pretty useless in what the world is. Like, what do you really want to do? Because nothing works. Well, he's got the glee of ignorance, in the sense of the world is there for me for the taking. He's like a good-natured Tony Montana. Without the drugs, but that thing of the world is mine, I will take it. And no matter how many fails he gets, he will still keep going. He's driven to succeed. He will always look for the advantage of any situation and keep working towards that advantage. So it's a dynamic of someone who is aware of the world and someone who's really not. So Cooper Hoffman at the start is a child actor, but he's grown out of that period where he's no longer cute. He's a bit of a dick to people, and it's starting to kind of come back to him. Like, he's still professional, he can still do the things, but he's aged out, and he's no longer the cute kid who can be put in shows with older actors. Because now he's talking back to the actors, and he's probably the bloom of it is gone from him, so he's starting into other ventures. Well, Anna Haim's character is someone he deals with who comes to a photo shoot at the school as helping photographer. It's just a photo shoot of all the different class photographs. Very basic stuff, but she kind of dislikes the guy who runs it, who's a bit of a pervert, and she wants to get out, and starts to bond with Cooper Hoffman's character slowly. She knows what he is, and she knows he's infatuated with her, but he's young. At the start of the film, he's only 15. But this takes place over quite a few years, so as it goes on, he's he's no longer underage, so it's not there's not a creepy thing, and he's so motivated to start his businesses. Like, so he gets into waterbeds for a while, and he promotes them until the gas shortages, when she says your bed's made of material made from oil. There's a shortage of that now, which means your business will collapse. And he doesn't have a clue, because he's so focused on what he's doing that he doesn't think of what leads to what. And throughout the film, she's much more aware of what leads to what. But she's still hanging around with these kids because it's fun, and she's just not really ready to go into the real world in the way that she really needs to be. So it's a thing of she's kind of hanging on to youth in a weird way. But there's also an attraction between these two, but they're not quite sure of each other. They don't quite trust each other, and plus he's much younger. So she's very kind of careful about that as well. So it's a slow process. It's like a romance, a slow process of two people who actually dig each other, but they both have problems. The way people have in real life, in a way that a romantic film would brush over for the rush of the romance, the cellular romance. Here it's much more like, how do these people actually get on over the years? How will they get on in life? Dealing with each other's flaws, dealing with each other's ambitions. Like, he doesn't understand her ambitions for politics that she's a passion for, that he doesn't understand how she can organise all this stuff and actually be very good at it and have a political point of view, because to him, the politics don't matter. Just like, these are the people in charge, I'll deal with whoever's in charge to get what I want. He doesn't care about the politics. He's just in it for the money. So, it's about this dynamic of how will they learn to live with each other. And and will they even admit to each other that they actually are into each other. You know what I mean? Because she just thinks I'm too old for him. And he doesn't care about that at all. He's just into her. And he's like someone who won't give up, even though at times he has immature moments with other people. So does she, and it's about the complications of people, ultimately. There's some great stuff in this. There's a fun stuff with, there's a bit with Sean Penn playing William Holden. It's called Jack Holden, this one, but it's William Holden, who's a bit of a madman. There's another bit with John Peters, who's played by Bradley Cooper, who's a completely nutcase in this film. And there's also all the details of all the lives they're having with each other and all their friends in this one area. And it's just wonderful stuff throughout. It's really well done. It's a beautiful film. Highly recommended. But it's not a film you go to if you want a big plot. It's a character-based thing. You're either going to like that or you're not. Nothing to do about it. It's just, if you want something character-based, this is for you. If not, avoid it. Now, Amsterdam is more plotty, but it's plotty in a very loose way. In the case of it's got a political point of view. It's got a lot of characters, and everything's mixed together, and there's flashbacks, and you move back and forth in time, and the characters are all eccentric, and that can either make you like them, or it will drive you mad because you think they're trying too hard. I really liked them, but for me, the reason why I liked them was they're damaged people who are obviously damaged people. And when they talk about the philosophies and things, it's always the work of damaged people trying to make sense of life. If you take it as an actual serious point about life, you're going to miss the point and it's going to be annoying to you. But the film itself is about fascism in the 30s. Is the main point about it, is the idea of basically Christian Bale plays as a doctor who's helping World War I veteran, because he is a World War I veteran. He lost an eye. His back scarred. He has to wear a brace to survive. He was sent to the war by his family, or his in-laws, who wanted rid of him, because he married their daughter, but they don't quite see him as their kind of material, their son-in-law material. He survived the war. And he ended up in the one black brigade in the war. David Washington plays the guy in charge of there. You also get Chris Rock in there, and they were dealing with the racism of their countrymen while they were fighting the war for their country. So they So they needed a guy who a doctor who wouldn't be racist. So that was Christian Bale, and they all bond really because he's not racist in any way. He's just a person trying to survive the war, and so are they, and they bond over the fact that they are going to try and survive. There, as the war goes on, that's a very brief sequence. They get injured and they go to the hospital as the war's ending, where they meet Margot Robbie's character, who's a nurse there and who helps save them. And all three of them at that point form a bond with each other. They end up going to Amsterdam, which is the glorious summer where everything goes right, everything's wonderful for them. They get in with two characters played by Michael Shannon and Mike Myers, who are basically working for the spy networks after World War One, but are also living the life in Amsterdam too. They've got a cover of They Make Glass Eyes, which is how they meet with Christian Bale. But Margot Robbie already knows who they are. And essentially, they are a lot of the friendships bond there that lead them to 20 years down the line or 15 years down the line, when basically they're back in America, they've lost contact with Margot Robbie. Bale and Washington are still working together. Washington's now a lawyer, Bale's still a doctor, but he's in and out with his family. And he's working from a total shithole. But he's still trying to help the troops. He's still passionate about the war veterans from the First World War and what they went through and how they've been ignored. And a plot starts to develop. They have to try and decipher where they've been targeted, where the guy who used to be in command was murdered. They have to try and find out who it was. His daughter was also murdered. And they are kind of being targeted for the murders. And they have to try and figure it all out. And in an instant they run into Margot Robbie's character and you find out what she's been doing since the war. And she joins them in their investigation of this murder and try to figure out what happened. And it's all tied to developing fascists in America and how a lot of them want to emulate the fascists in Europe, like the Mussolinis and the Hitlers, things like that. So it's the idea of emergent fascism and how it also happened in America, but it was stopped. Because America had a lot of rich people who felt the country was theirs and it wasn't the place of the working man to see what we did. It was a place of the people who ran the factories, who ran industries, to see what was good, and what was good for them was not good for the people. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that you can also link to now, where you've got lots of companies, multinational companies, who say what's good for us is what's good for the world, and the workers don't matter. So it is linked to now. And it's linked to people like Trump and things like that, or any political leader actually who will say what they want, whatever they need to get in power, but they're actually still in the hands of the people who are actually financing them. So the one interesting thing was none of the politics was brought up in most of the reviews. Most of the reviews did not talk about the politics, which tells you how bad our situation is with critics is now. The fact that a very political film, the thing is missing mostly from the film and the reviews is what's it actually about. Because a lot of critics are so focused on keeping happy with the big studios so they can keep on seeing the films as they come out. Which means being happy about the Marvel films, the DC films, all the big studio releases that are basically comic books or remakes of old films that are basically films about characters with lots of powers who fight other villains with lots of powers that are not non-political but basically might is right. It's very I like comic book films, but they do have a very right-wing bias. They really do. I mean, look at Batman. Batman is essentially a rich guy who beats up poor people. And everyone loves the Batman, including me. But there's lots of stuff like that, and it's like, so this film with all the politics, the actual politics, the reality of what goes on in the world. The politics are never brought up. Because a lot of people in criticism are apolitical to a degree. their point of view is we want to make what we like acceptable, which means it's comic book movies and stuff like that, and stuff for children. Basically, they're ignoring the huge past of film history and the complications of film history to get what they would like as children being viewed as acceptable and viewed as these are complex movies, just as important as The Godfather. No, they're not. They're really not. And it's like this. It shows you how. That's a film in the 70s that would be released and it would be like, it's not a 70s film. It would not have caused any controversy at all. It would not have caused any comment. The politics would have been commented on. Now, it's just all a bit, self-indulgent, it's this or that, they're too pleased themselves. Rather than, this is a film where people were traumatised by the war, they're PTSD, they're obviously eccentric, because the full film is about the damage done to these people in the film, how they're trying to react to the damage done to them, from their families, from society, from different things that have happened to them, from how they're always getting knocked down no matter when they're trying to do things to help people. And there's a whole subtext about how racist the country actually is. How basically the Washington character has to work hard all the time to just get the basic rights, and how he's actually been told with Chris Rock all the time, don't get involved in this because as soon as they see this, they'll just kill you because you're black. I mean, Christian Bale's character is getting ignored for trying to help the veterans. And they try to exploit the veterans for a political gain to make the fascists get more power. Which is the clumsiest part of the film. Because when you get to the end, you know who the villains are, and they don't have a clever way to get to from A to B with that bit. So that's the big problem, is the last third slows down a little bit. And it could have been a bit more developed in storylines. But even then, it's some wonderful stuff, like there's a dance sequence and there's all these veterans playing on this stage. It's a really wonderful sequence. There's lots of wonderful stuff throughout this film, lots of details about life on the times that most films would ignore, which is why you want David O. Russell involved, because he's good at that kind of stuff. The little things that no one else sees. So I think this film will be ripe for reinvention critically over time. I mean, the response to this reminds me a lot of The Long Goodbye when it was released, where everyone hated it. It's like, how can you do this to Raymond Chandler? How can you do this? This is disgusting. How can you do this? And now it's viewed as a classic because it took something and gave it a political spin, a different spin from what people expected. But it's the same with the screwball comedy thing, but adding a lot of social elements and details about rising fascism. It's what every country has to deal with nowadays, with people, a lot of power going to the corporations and small businesses getting crushed, and politicians not defending at all any small business, like, or their own councils or anything else. It's just like, we'll cave to big business that doesn't pay tax to us and exists in our countries, basically. It's all about that sense of people getting screwed over and people getting mad about it, and how simplistic messages can actually make it worse. And it's something you see all the time, and it's a film about that, the idea of what you're seeing. We're all getting sold nonsense by politicians, you're getting sold lies, basically, about how things are going to get better when they're always getting worse, and how they think that anybody can be bought, and how businesses are brought up through means that are not very good for the people, which exploits workers, and these idiots who do it think they're important and think how they see the world is very important. And we can see quite a few people that applies to. So it's a lot of wonderful stuff in it. It's probably De Niro's best performance in years. He plays a guy who fights the veterans and they're trying to push to be the spokesman. These fans are trying to push to be the spokesman. It's the most engaged he's been for a long time. He really obviously believed in the project. And he's really trying. All the actors seem to believe in the project and are really trying. So I don't get why this film gets so much hate. It's like, it's obviously a well-meaning film. It's well made. There's lots of good stuff in it. I can see not liking it. It's not your kind of thing. But it's a professional made film. I saw people giving it 1 star or half star on Letterboxd, thinking, what are you doing? And then it's like, it's obviously because they don't like the director. It's obviously there's there's a hit piece in this guy at the moment because of his mistakes in the past, and it's like, give me a break. You know, it's just like, look at me, how hip I am. I can see this guy's terrible. We all know that trick. So yeah, it's a worthwhile film. You may not like the film though. That's the thing. It's a acquired taste film, but it is a professionally made film by a good director and a good cast. It's not like the worst reviews are hyperbolic, and the best ones didn't quite get the film either because it does have flaws. It's just that hit that kind of weird middle ground of it's a very ambitious film with flaws that is passionate, but people are recoiling from the politics, recoiling from the director, recoiling from a fairly big budget film with a political theme, recoiling from everything that's kind of grown up and just saying, I want the easy answers like give me Black Panther 2. So I was fairly annoyed by the reaction to this film, as you can probably guess. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you go and watch both of these films. They're both really worthwhile. Okay, bye for now.